It's crazy. It's a lot. I know. Wish me luck. I'm Martina. I learned to sew on the internet, and today I want to teach you how you can sew your own perfectly curated closet for yourself entirely for free. I follow a lot of sewists, and a lot of them oftentimes say that sewing is a very expensive hobby and they spend a lot on fabrics and then they don't end up using a lot of them because their sewing stash just grows and grows. And that part, 100%, no matter how much fabric you have, you're never going to use every single one of it, and you'll buy it and then not make the project you intended for it, and 2 months later, suddenly you're not interested in it anymore. So, I don't pay any money for my fabrics, and here's how I do it. I will talk you through a couple of topics today. I'll start off with the sewing machine because I know that is a very big investment just to even start off sewing. Then I'll talk about fabrics, notions, and then in the end I will touch a little bit on the mindset you're gonna need to have if you want to make sewing very, very affordable. First up, sewing machines. My number one tip for any beginner sewist is do not buy a new sewing machine. To start off sewing, you're gonna need a household sewing machine that can do 3 things. Number 1, a straight stitch, 2, a zigzag stitch, and number 3, you need to be able to sew a buttonhole. If you don't own a machine yet, what you're going to do is the first thing you're going to do is you're going to ask around if anyone still has a machine laying around that they don't need. Usually you're luckier in the older generation, so ask your parents, aunts, uncles, friends of your parents. My sister actually also has one that she doesn't use anymore, so that is going to be your first step. And if they have one, use that machine. No matter how old it is, no matter how bad it is, no matter if you're like, it doesn't work perfectly fine, watch a bunch of videos. There is many issues you can fix with just thread tension and threading the machine new, but do not buy yourself a new machine. And then, if you can't find a machine, asking around, if no one in your family or friend group has one, happens, this is where you're gonna actually have to take a little bit of money and you're gonna have to buy yourself a machine. For that, you're gonna go on eBay or any other secondhand site that you wanna go for, and you're gonna look for the big name brands. If anything breaks in your machine, you wanna be able to get it fixed by someone who knows that machine, and you also wanna be able to get spare parts. And that is going to be significantly easier if you go for one of the big name brands. So those are like Singer, Bernina, Pfaff, Brother. I personally always work with Pfaff, which I believe internationally isn't such a big brand. Those are the big name brands. If you're able to get your hands on a machine from those brands, you're good to go. I personally use a Pfaff Tipmatic 6122. A lot of people are happy with the Singer heavy duty machine, which you can buy new, but I am sure that there is quite a few out there on the secondhand market as well. Rule of thumb, I would say do not pay more than 300 euros. My machine on the secondhand market is about 300. Some similar models which have like 1 or 2 functions less are about 200. But usually you will be able to get your hands on a very beginner-friendly machine for around 100, I would say. And then when reading through the description, what you have to look out for is you have to pay attention to whether the machine was well taken care of. Getting the machines fixed can get quite expensive, so whichever machine you get, you want it to be one that was taken care of well. Once you have your machine, you're gonna get yourself some fabric. So for me, it took me quite a while to grow my stash. I'm gonna show it to you later in this video, so stay tuned. I'll show you in the end what my current sewing stash situation looks like after I just cleared out an entire moving box of fabric. At this point, I can no longer keep up with it. I am currently declining offers from friends and family who want to gift me fabric because I personally don't have the capacity to take any more. All of the fabric I currently have in my stash has been gifted to me over the last couple of years. None of those come through social media, so nothing from anyone who I don't personally know. All of them come from friends, family, friends of family. So here's how I did it. The first thing you're going to do is when you start sewing is you tell everyone about it. And even if in 3 months you're not going to be sewing anymore and people will be like, hey, are you still sewing? And you'll be like, oh, no, I didn't do it. Fine, perfectly fine. You tell every living soul that you sew. At every party you go to, you drop a hint and mention, oh, I sew, I made this outfit. Everyone. Whenever a person has fabric that they're getting rid of, that they want to donate, that they don't need anymore, they immediately should think of you, and they should, before they do anything else with it, call you up and ask you whether you want the fabric. That is what you want. I have gotten fabric from my dad's former boss. My sister's boss's mom was a seamstress, and when she passed away, her boss was like, hey, would you like to look through her stash, through her collection, take whatever you'd like. A friend of mine, my aunt's friend, a roommate of mine, the list goes on, but you get the idea. On average, the older generation are going to be the ones that are going to have more fabric or are more likely to be getting rid of fabric or their own stash that they've had for many, many years. So usually you'll be luckier there, but I also have had very good experiences with friends my age, either having fabric themselves that they're getting rid of, or again, having connections to their parents or aunts or whatever. It is going to take a while for people to reach out to you. It is going to be a while until someone's like, oh, I'm getting rid of fabric right now. If you don't straight up ask, hey, do you have some fabric for me, but are like, hey, I sew, and you just wait for them to sort through their fabric, that is going to take a while. So in the meantime, what you can do is you can thrift some fabrics. I know I said for free. This, once again, will cost you a little bit of money. The way to do this for free is sell 5 pieces of clothing in your closet that you don't need anymore. Put those up on Poshmark, Vinted, whatever you want. Take that money and go to the thrift store. And the 3 things you're going to be looking for is bed sheets, curtains, and tablecloth. These 3 specifically because they are a very big amount of fabric that you can work with, so you can make kind of larger projects if you'd like to. They are also a woven cotton most of the time, which is very, very easy to work with as a beginner sewer. This is the one thing. The other way you can do it, obviously, is the way a lot of people start their sewing career, with upcycling. So buying already finished garments at the thrift store and just sewing them to fit you. That is obviously also an option. But if you want to make completely new garments, those 3 things: curtains, bed sheets, and tablecloths. The last rule for fabrics: don't buy fabric online. Once you know what GSM means and you know the difference between canvas, chiffon, satin, what the difference between satin and silk even is, do not buy fabric online. Once you have all that knowledge, you have a basis on like what to look for and what you specifically want, and you will have much better luck. But otherwise, fabric you buy online is never going to be what you want it to. I know the prices are much better than at fabric stores. Don't do it. Now you want to turn your bedsheet into a garment. For that, you are going to need some notions. The basic notions you're going to need for most of your projects are going to be thread. You always need some thread. And then buttons and zippers. Those are like the 2 main ones. You might also like to have elastic band, bias tape, or hooks and eyes, for example. Notions, same principles with the fabric. I've also been gifted quite a few notions, but notions themselves are also abundant at thrift stores and flea markets. Personally, I think flea markets are really, really cool for notions, especially zippers. I have no idea why, it just happens to be that way. Every single flea market I stumble upon, there is a big box of zippers and they look very nice quality, so do with that what you will. Let's start with the thread. One thing you're going to stay away from is cotton thread. I know the idea of cotton thread, you can sew cotton fabric with cotton thread, the entire thing is biodegradable. Yes. Cotton thread, however, it's just not as strong as polyester or silk. Polyester and silk are the ones you want to go for. I personally also work with cheaper sewing thread. I know some people swear by the fact that sewing thread is the one thing you can't skimp out on and you definitely need to pay the extra money for it. I've only made good experiences with cheap thread so far, so I don't personally go by that rule. But if you want to go look for something that is quality, go ahead and keep an eye out for Gütermann yarn, which specifically the polyester ones. If you find those thrifting or at a flea market, go ahead and pick those up immediately. They are still going to be good. Cotton, for example, it just gets worse over time. Polyester, even if it was bought in the 60s, it's still a good yarn. When it comes to the colors of yarn to buy, you're going to get very, very far with just white and black thread. And then when it comes to colors, I think red is an important one to have if you're going to sew with red, because neither white nor black look good with red. And then there's some very specific cases when I would say it's a very strong color. Everything pastel-y you can do with white, everything super dark you can do with black, but like very like primary colors, it's good to have those. Now for the other notions, hooks and eyes, buttons, and bias tape. From my experiences, all of those have very, very similar quality. I don't think there is much that you need to be looking out for. When it comes to buttons, you don't want anywhere like the colors chipping off on the top, but you'll be able to see that straight away if that's the case. But aside from that, I would say just go with it, you'll figure it out. Now with elastic band, you have to be careful with some of the older elastic bands because some of that loses its elasticity and it just crumbles once you stretch it. So that I would get newer if possible. And now for zippers. Zippers are a very big one. So here are my rules. With zippers, you can't always tell at first glance whether they're going to be a good or a bad zipper, and some of them end up being bad even though you thought they were good, and it sucks, but you're going to have to go through that. The leading brand for zippers is YKK. So if you get a YKK zipper, most of the time it's going to be decent quality. I've also used other zippers. I've bought zippers new quite often, and I've paid a fraction of the price as I would for YKK zippers, and I'm very, very happy with them. So once again, not a given that the cheaper ones are bad quality. Invisible zippers, I hate working with them. I never buy them. Then the thin plastic coil zippers, those honestly are the flimsiest ones. For those, I would definitely say go with quality. Do not buy the 50 pack on Amazon. You will regret it because all of them will break within a week. Yes, that's from experience. I do sometimes not follow my own advice. Then chunky plastic zippers are usually always a safe bet. I've never had one break on me before. And then for metal zippers, it is an individual thing to every single zipper. So you're gonna look out whether it is like super scratchy when you open or close it, like super difficult to do. Don't buy that. Also, if you pull apart at the top when it's closed, it shouldn't come undone by itself. So neither that nor that, but something in between. What's perfect is if it has like a little notch in like the tab, so when you put the tab down, then it locks itself so it doesn't open by itself. Metal zippers, check them out, look at them very, very specifically when you're at the flea market. Take your time to inspect every single zipper, because once it is in your pants, you're not going to be like, oh, whatever, that one zipper. Suddenly it's the one zipper that actually has to close when you're in the bathroom. So go ahead and inspect them. Let's talk about your mindset. I know spending money on sewing is super, super easy. Getting a pattern and then getting the exact amount of yardage you need and the fabric that you want, plus a half a yard or a yard extra to make that project perfect is the most convenient thing ever. But if you want to sew on a budget, you're gonna have to make some sacrifices. Sometimes your dream project will have to wait to be finished for like weeks, months, maybe even years until the perfect fabric stumbles into your house. Sometimes your fabric just won't be quite enough to make the jacket you wanted to make. Sometimes we're gonna have to patchwork together some pattern pieces that are a bit hidden, maybe the inside of your sleeve, just to make it work. You absolutely need to be willing to compromise. Sometimes maybe your pockets or your collar will suddenly be made out of a different fabric because you just didn't have enough left. And your design won't look the way you wanted it to initially, but you will still come up with something beautiful, and it forces you to be more creative in your sewing, and I think that is a very, very big pro. I hope this video helped you to give you an overview of what you need to start sewing. I'm going to do a deep dive on each of these topics in the future, so if you have any questions, please go ahead and leave them down below, and I will see you very soon. I almost forgot to show you my sewing stash, but this is it. It has moved down to the basement since I moved out, but this is the one half. All of these bolts of faux leather are the second half.